We don't talk about it much, but so much of dating today has turned into this unspoken performance. You walk into a room, and before you even open your mouth, you feel the weight of someone's eyes scanning you. It's quick, it's silent, and yet it can decide how they see you before they've heard a single word about who you are. And for a lot of women, that moment can carry years of pressure. Pressure to be noticed, to measure up, to be enough in someone else's eyes. But here's the thing most people miss. What they're looking at first isn't always about you at all. It's about what they value, what they're trained to notice, and sometimes what they haven't yet learned to appreciate. And if you don't understand that, you'll spend your life trying to win a game you didn't even choose to play. A lot of people won't say this out loud, but the truth is attraction starts in seconds. And for many women, those seconds feel like a silent judgment. You're not just meeting someone, you're being evaluated often before you've spoken a single word. That can stir up a mix of emotions, curiosity, insecurity, maybe even frustration, because deep down, you want to be seen for more than your body, but you also know the body is part of what's seen first. And when you don't fully understand what someone's noticing or why, it can leave you questioning yourself in ways you shouldn't have to. This isn't about turning dating into a checklist or teaching you to mold yourself into someone else's preferences. It's about understanding what's really happening in those first moments so you can stop guessing, stop overthinking, and start walking into any room with the kind of confidence that doesn't depend on anyone else's eyes. When attraction feels like judgment, it's because those first few seconds with someone can carry a weight you never agreed to hold. You walk into a room, and before a word is spoken, you can feel their eyes on you, scanning, assessing, deciding. It's not always malicious, and sometimes it's just human nature. But that doesn't mean it's harmless, because in those moments, what should feel like connection can start to feel like an evaluation. You're not meeting each other as equals. You're standing there on a scale you never stepped on willingly, and every glance feels like it's giving you a score. That's the quiet part people don't talk about, how exhausting it is to live under that kind of spotlight, especially in dating where you're told attraction matters, but no one tells you what to do when that attraction comes wrapped in silent expectations. You can start to believe you're only worth as much as the sum of what they see. And when you believe that, you start playing a role, you adjust how you stand, you measure your smile, you choose your words with the thought, will this make them want me? Rather than, is this who I really am? That's not connection, that's performance. The deeper truth is that a lot of what someone notices first isn't about you personally, it's about them. It's about their upbringing, their preferences, their learned patterns. It's the result of years of conditioning that taught them where to look before they learned how to listen. But when you don't understand that, it's easy to internalize it. You start thinking, if they're looking at this, then that's all that matters. And little by little, the pressure to be attractive turns into the fear of being rejected. I want to be clear, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be attractive to someone. Physical attraction has its place. But when attraction feels like judgment, it stops being about connection and starts being about approval. You find yourself trying to pass someone else's test without even knowing what the questions are. And the truth is, you could pass every one of those tests and still lose yourself in the process. The way through this isn't about changing how you look or trying to control where someone's eyes go first. It's about changing how you see yourself in that moment. You can't stop someone from noticing you physically, but you can stop translating that into a verdict on your worth. You can remember that their gaze is just one small part of the whole picture, and the parts of you that matter most are the ones they can't see at first glance. When you walk into a room knowing who you are, you stop walking in to be chosen. You walk in already chosen by yourself. And when someone's attraction to you is rooted in more than what they see first, that's when you know you're not being judged. You're being seen. The silent pressure of first impressions is something most of us carry without realizing how heavy it is. The moment you meet someone new, whether it's on a date, in a meeting, or even through a friend, there's this unspoken clock ticking. You feel like you have seconds to say the right thing, wear the right expression, and send the right message about who you are. And while no one says it out loud, you can sense it in the way people's eyes move, the pauses in their voice, the way they decide, often without knowing it. If you're worth leaning into or stepping away from, that pressure can be especially strong in dating. You might walk into a coffee shop to meet someone for the first time and instantly start wondering, do they like what they see? Do I seem confident enough? Am I coming across the right way? Those thoughts aren't harmless background noise. They shape the way you stand, the tone in your voice, even how much of your real personality you're willing to let show. And without meaning to, you can end up presenting a filtered version of yourself, one that's designed to pass the moment rather than invite real connection. The tricky part is, first impressions are powerful, but they're also shallow. They capture a snapshot, not a story. And yet we often treat them like they're the whole picture. If someone's face lights up when they meet us, we feel validated. If they seem distracted or unimpressed, we feel like we've already lost. That's where the real harm comes in. When we start tying our self-worth to someone else's split-second reaction. A lot of this comes from how we've been conditioned. Growing up, many of us learned that acceptance was something to be earned quickly. Through being polite, being attractive, being impressive. We didn't learn that true connection takes time, that real understanding is built in layers. So as adults, we still carry that urgency into our interactions, especially romantic ones. We try to secure someone's interest before they've had a chance to actually know us. The truth is, you can't control how someone responds to you in those first moments. You can influence it, sure, but control? No. And the more you try, the more you risk shrinking yourself to fit what you think they want. That's not confidence, that's survival mode. And survival mode might help you get through the moment, but it won't build the kind of relationship where you can breathe, relax, and be yourself. What you can do is shift your focus. Instead of asking, how do I make the best first impression? Try asking, how do I show up as myself fully in this moment? That small shift removes the silent pressure and puts you back in control of what you can control, your authenticity. Because the right connection isn't built on how perfectly you perform in the first 5 minutes. It's built on whether the person you meet is drawn to the real you, not just the highlight reel. When you stop treating first impressions like final verdicts, you free yourself to engage with people differently. You're no longer playing for approval. You're looking for alignment. And that change, quiet as it is, can make every first meeting feel lighter, calmer, and a whole lot more human. Seeing beyond what the eyes notice first is about slowing down enough to recognize that the first thing we're drawn to in someone is rarely the whole story. In dating, those first moments are often driven by instinct, a glance, a smile, a certain way someone carries themselves. It's easy to mistake that spark for a complete understanding of who they are. But if all we do is stay focused on what's visible in those first few seconds, we risk building a connection on the surface and missing the depth that's only revealed with time. The challenge is that our minds are wired to make quick judgments. It's part of human nature to scan, assess, and decide in an instant if someone feels safe, interesting, or attractive. But just because the brain works that way doesn't mean our relationships have to. When we let those first impressions be the whole truth, we start operating on assumptions instead of curiosity. We may think, I already know the type of person they are, when in reality, all we've done is notice the packaging. For the person on the other side of that glance, it can feel like they're being reduced to a single feature, a style choice, or a momentary expression. They might feel seen but not known, admired but not understood, and over time that can wear on a person. Because being looked at is not the same thing as being valued. Attention without understanding leaves people feeling like they have to keep proving themselves to be worth more than the first thing someone noticed. That's why learning to see beyond what the eyes notice first matters so much. It's not just about being fair to the other person. It's about creating the conditions for real connection. The more we slow down and pay attention to the subtler things, their sense of humor, the way they treat people when no one's watching, how they respond under stress, the more we give ourselves a chance to form an attachment that's based on substance, not snapshots. It's also about holding ourselves accountable for the way we take people in. If we're honest, sometimes we stop at the surface because it's easier. It's easier to make a quick call than to sit with the complexity of someone else's humanity. But the relationships that last, the ones that actually feel safe, fulfilling, and steady, are built by people who are willing to keep looking, to keep asking, to keep learning about each other long after the first impression has faded. When you practice seeing beyond what the eyes notice first, you start to value connection over instant gratification. You stop letting the spark dictate the story and instead let the story show you if the spark was worth pursuing in the first place. And when someone feels like you've taken the time to know them, truly know them, that's when the walls come down. That's when attraction turns into respect, and respect turns into trust. And trust is what keeps two people connected long after the first glance is a distant memory. When your worth feels measured in seconds, it means you've stepped into a silent race you didn't sign up for. You walk into a room or meet someone new, And before you even have a chance to speak, you can feel it. The unspoken countdown of, do I look enough? Am I enough? It's this invisible stopwatch ticking in your mind, telling you that all your value depends on how quickly someone decides if you're desirable or interesting. And that pressure, it's exhausting. This isn't just about vanity or surface level attraction. It goes deeper. When you feel like your worth is on the line in those brief moments, you start to lose touch with the parts of yourself that actually matter, your kindness, your humor, your wisdom, your way of loving. Instead, you're locked into a feedback loop where your self-esteem is tied to how quickly you get approval. It's like you're standing on shifting sands, always trying to keep your balance, but never feeling stable enough to just be yourself. It's important to acknowledge that this feeling is real and common. So many people, especially women, carry this silent burden in the dating world. Society teaches us early on to be aware of how we look, how we act, how we come across, as if these things define our whole value. But that's a lie that keeps us small. It keeps us from stepping fully into who we are because we're afraid that if we don't fit into someone else's quick judgment, we'll be left behind. The problem is, no matter how much effort you put into managing those first seconds, you can't control other people's reactions. And you shouldn't have to. Trying to squeeze your worth into a brief glance or a fleeting thought is like trying to hold water in your hands. It slips away every time. And when your value feels that fragile, it leaves you vulnerable to disappointment, anxiety, and a constant sense of not being enough. The way out of this isn't about changing yourself to fit a fleeting standard. It's about shifting where you place your worth. You have to remind yourself and keep reminding yourself that your value is not something someone else decides in a moment. Your worth is found in your consistency, your heart, your presence. It's in the way you show up for yourself even when no one else is watching. When you begin to anchor your worth in something steady and internal, the pressure of those first seconds begins to fade. You start to meet people from a place of calm rather than urgency. You're no longer chasing approval, you're inviting connection. And that invitation feels different. It feels real. This isn't easy. It takes practice and patience to untangle yourself from years of conditioning that said you had to be instantly lovable or instantly likable. But it's worth it, because when you stop measuring your worth in seconds, you open the door to relationships where you are truly seen, not just for what's on the surface, but for the whole person you are. And that kind of seeing, that's the foundation of something meaningful and lasting. The unspoken weight of being looked at is something many people carry quietly, often without realizing just how heavy it feels until you stop and notice. When someone's eyes land on you, whether it's in a crowded room, a casual glance from across the street, or a more intimate moment, there's a subtle but real pressure that comes with it. It's not just about being seen, it's about the feeling that you're being measured, judged, and assigned value based on things you can't control or aren't ready to share. That weight settles in your chest even if you don't say a word about it. For a lot of women, especially, this weight can be overwhelming. It's the difference between feeling noticed and feeling exposed. Being looked at can bring a flicker of validation, sure, but it can also stir up a quiet anxiety. The question of, am I enough? Or do they only see what's on the outside? And when you live with that question buzzing just beneath the surface, it shapes how you move through the world. You might find yourself pulling back, guarding your body or your emotions, trying to control how you appear to others so the weight feels lighter. What's important to understand here is that this weight is rarely spoken about because it's so personal and vulnerable. It's not easy to admit that being seen can feel like a burden. We want to believe that being noticed is a gift, but for many, it comes with strings attached. It's wrapped up in expectations to look a certain way, to behave a certain way, to be immediately likable or desirable. And if you don't meet those invisible expectations, the weight grows heavier. There's also an emotional loneliness to this experience. When you feel like you're constantly under a gaze that's trying to size you up, it's easy to feel disconnected from the very people who notice you, because being looked at isn't the same as being known. People can see your face, your smile, the way you carry yourself, but that doesn't mean they see your story, your struggles, or your dreams. And the disconnect between appearance and reality creates a silent gap, one that can make you feel unseen even when you're fully visible. Carrying this unspoken weight can affect relationships too. When you bring this tension into a new connection, it can cause you to hold back parts of yourself out of fear of rejection, fear of being misunderstood, or fear that your worth depends on meeting someone else's standard. And the more you protect yourself, the less chance there is for genuine intimacy to grow. The good news is this weight doesn't have to be permanent. The first step is recognizing it, naming the feeling instead of pushing it aside, then learning to carry it differently, with more compassion for yourself and more patience with others. It's about creating relationships where being looked at doesn't feel like a test, but like a step toward being truly seen. When you start to believe that your value isn't tied to how others look at you, you can begin to shed that heavy load. You'll find the courage to show up fully without armor, knowing that the right people will appreciate the whole you, not just the parts that are easy to notice. And that kind of freedom is the foundation for connection that lasts, not just attention that fades. How physical attention shapes emotional connection is one of those quiet truths that's easy to overlook but hard to escape. When someone's eyes land on you, when they notice your smile, the way you move, or the subtle details of your presence, it starts something, sometimes without words, sometimes without intention. Physical attention is the doorway to emotional connection, but it's also a delicate dance, because while being noticed can open the door, it's not enough by itself to build something real. Many people confuse physical attention with emotional intimacy. They believe that if someone is drawn to their appearance, their energy, their style, that it means they're truly seen. But physical attention is just the beginning. It's a spark, and like any spark, it can either ignite warmth or quickly fade. The real challenge is what happens after that first moment of noticing. Does the attention deepen? Does it move beyond the surface? Or does it stop there, leaving you feeling both visible and invisible at the same time? This can create a quiet tension in relationships, especially early on. When physical attraction is strong but emotional connection feels thin, it's easy to feel confused or even empty. You might wonder, why do they seem interested in me one minute and distant the next? Or why does their attention feel so fleeting, like it's focused more on how I look than who I am? These feelings aren't unusual. They come from that gap between being physically noticed and being emotionally known. What's often missed is how much our experience of physical attention shapes the way we open up emotionally. If someone's attention feels genuine, safe, and curious, it can lower the walls we've built to protect ourselves. It can invite us to share our fears, our dreams, and the messy parts we usually keep hidden. But if that attention feels superficial or conditional, based only on appearance or momentary desire, it keeps those walls firmly in place. This is why so many people struggle with vulnerability in dating. We want to be seen and loved for who we really are, but the way physical attention is given or withheld can make us doubt if that's possible. We start questioning whether we should hide parts of ourselves to keep the attention, or if the attention is worth the cost of feeling unseen beyond the surface. The key is learning to recognize the difference between attention that invites connection and attention that only brushes the surface. Real emotional connection grows when attention is steady, patient, and interested in more than just the obvious. It's when someone listens deeply, notices your unspoken needs, and values the whole person, not just the parts that catch their eye first. When you can see physical attention as a first step rather than the whole journey, it changes how you relate to others and yourself. You stop chasing approval based on looks alone and start seeking relationships where attention and connection grow together. That shift opens space for vulnerability, trust, and a deeper kind of intimacy, one that lasts long after the initial attraction has settled into something real. Physical attention matters, it's natural, human, and often the first door to connection. But emotional connection is the home we build when that door stays open and we invite someone in fully, beyond what the eyes see first. How physical attention shapes emotional connection is one of those quiet truths that's easy to overlook but hard to escape. When someone's eyes land on you, when they notice your smile, the way you move, or the subtle details of your presence, it starts something, sometimes without words, sometimes without intention. Physical attention is the doorway to emotional connection, but it's also a delicate dance. Because while being noticed can open the door, it's not enough by itself to build something real. Many people confuse physical attention with emotional intimacy. They believe that if someone is drawn to their appearance, their energy, their style, that it means they're truly seen. But physical attention is just the beginning. It's a spark, and like any spark, it can either ignite warmth or quickly fade. The real challenge is what happens after that first moment of noticing. Does the attention deepen? Does it move beyond the surface? Or does it stop there, leaving you feeling both visible and invisible at the same time? This can create a quiet tension in relationships, especially early on. When physical attraction is strong but emotional connection feels thin, it's easy to feel confused or even empty. You might wonder, why do they seem interested in me one minute and distant the next? Or why does their attention feel so fleeting, like it's focused more on how I look than who I am? These feelings aren't unusual. They come from that gap between being physically noticed and being emotionally known. What's often missed is how much our experience of physical attention shapes the way we open up emotionally. If someone's attention feels genuine, safe, and curious, it can lower the walls we've built to protect ourselves. It can invite us to share our fears, our dreams, and the messy parts we usually keep hidden. But if that attention feels superficial or conditional, based only on appearance or momentary desire, it keeps those walls firmly in place. This is why so many people struggle with vulnerability in dating. We want to be seen and loved for who we really are. But the way physical attention is given or withheld can make us doubt if that's possible. We start questioning whether we should hide parts of ourselves to keep the attention, or if the attention is worth the cost of feeling unseen beyond the surface. The key is learning to recognize the difference between attention that invites connection and attention that only brushes the surface. Real emotional connection grows when attention is steady, patient, and interested in more than just the obvious. It's when someone listens deeply, notices your unspoken needs, and values the whole person, not just the parts that catch their eye first. When you can see physical attention as a first step rather than the whole journey, it changes how you relate to others and yourself. You stop chasing approval based on looks alone and start seeking relationships where attention and connection grow together. That shift opens space for vulnerability, trust, and a deeper kind of intimacy, one that lasts long after the initial attraction has settled into something real. Physical attention matters, it's natural, human, and often the first door to connection. But emotional connection is the home we build when that door stays open and we invite someone in fully, beyond what the eyes see first. When you feel valued for the wrong reasons, it's a quiet kind of pain that creeps into your heart over time. At first, it might feel good to be noticed, to receive compliments, or to feel desired. But if the reasons behind that attention don't align with who you truly are, your values, your personality, your deeper qualities, then that feeling of being valued starts to feel fragile and hollow. You begin to wonder if the connection is real, or if you're just filling a space that someone else created out of their own needs or expectations. This happens more often than we like to admit, especially in dating and relationships. You might find yourself being appreciated for your appearance, your ability to please, or the way you make someone else feel about themselves, and that appreciation can feel like a lifeline. It can feel like validation. But when the foundation is built on those external or conditional things, it leaves you vulnerable to losing yourself in the process. Because being valued for the wrong reasons is never really about you. It's about what you provide, not who you are. There's an emotional toll in that. You start to question your worth beyond those reasons. You might think, if they only value me because of how I look or what I do for them, then what happens when those things change? It creates a kind of insecurity that lives beneath the surface, making you cautious about showing your true self. You hold back your fears, your opinions, your quirks, anything that might jeopardize the fragile approval you found. That caution is understandable. You want to protect yourself from being rejected or abandoned. But it also means you're not fully known, and without that full knowing, real intimacy can't take root. Relationships built on conditional value tend to be unstable because they rely on maintaining a certain image or performance rather than genuine connection. Over time, that can lead to feelings of loneliness even when you're with someone because your soul isn't being truly seen or accepted. Recognizing this pattern is the first step toward healing. It's about learning to identify when the reasons you're being valued don't align with your true self and being willing to ask harder questions about what you really need in a relationship. You deserve to be valued not just for what you give, but for who you are, your mind, your heart, your spirit. This doesn't mean you have to reject physical attraction or the natural ways people notice each other. It means paying attention to the quality of the attention and asking yourself if it's inviting you to be your whole self, or if it's asking you to fit into a mold that isn't yours. When you start to prioritize being valued for the right reasons, you begin to set boundaries that protect your heart and create space for authentic connection. It takes courage to walk away from relationships where you feel valued for the wrong reasons, because those connections often come with comfort and familiarity. But that courage opens the door to something much better, relationships where you are truly cherished, not just seen or used. When you allow yourself to be valued for who you really are, you step into a deeper sense of freedom, confidence, and peace that can change everything about how you love and how you're loved in return. There's a quiet but powerful gap between being seen and being known, and that gap can leave us feeling lonely even when we're surrounded by people. Being seen often means someone notices you, your appearance, your smile, the way you carry yourself. It's the surface level, the first layer that everyone experiences when they meet someone new. But being known is different. Being known means someone has taken the time to understand your fears, your dreams, the messy parts you usually hide. It means they see the parts of you that aren't easy to show, and they still choose to stay. That gap is where so many of us get stuck in relationships. We long for someone to know us deeply, but we settle for being seen because it's easier, safer, less vulnerable. When you're only seen, you can feel admired or appreciated, but there's often a distance that remains, like you're on display rather than in a true exchange. And that distance can leave you feeling invisible in the most painful way because your heart knows it's not fully engaged or understood. The truth is, being known requires risk. It means letting down your guard, sharing your fears and insecurities, revealing the parts of yourself that don't fit neatly into someone else's expectations. And that kind of vulnerability is terrifying because it opens you up to rejection. So instead, many of us keep parts of ourselves hidden and accept the comfort of being seen rather than the challenge of being known. That's not a failing or a weakness. It's human. We protect ourselves because we want to avoid pain. But the cost of staying in that gap between being seen and being known is real. It can make relationships feel shallow, unsatisfying, or even lonely. You might find yourself wondering why, even when someone notices you, you still feel disconnected or misunderstood. Learning to bridge that gap starts with recognizing that connection isn't just about visibility. It's about depth. It's about patience and curiosity, yours and theirs. It's about choosing to show up fully, even when it feels risky, and inviting someone else to do the same. And it's about understanding that being known doesn't happen overnight. It's built over time through shared stories, quiet moments, and consistent presence. When you start to prioritize being known over simply being seen, it changes how you approach relationships. You stop performing for approval and start sharing honestly. You allow yourself to ask for what you need and listen deeply to what the other person is offering. And that mutual openness creates a foundation where true intimacy can grow. It's also important to be patient with yourself and others in this process. Knowing someone fully is a journey, not a destination. Sometimes people won't be ready or willing to cross that gap, and that's okay. What matters is that you honor your own desire to be known and don't settle for less. At the end of the day, the difference between being seen and being known is what makes relationships meaningful. When someone knows you, they don't just notice your surface, they embrace your whole story, the beautiful, complicated, imperfect parts that make you who you are. And that kind of connection has the power to heal, to nourish, and to last. What first glances reveal, and what they don't, is something most of us have felt, but few have fully understood. That instant when your eyes meet someone's, or when you walk into a room and someone's gaze lands on you, it carries a weight that can feel electric or heavy, thrilling or threatening. We live in a world that often measures attraction in seconds, as if those few moments could define the entire story of who we are and how we're valued. But the reality is far more complex. First glances tell us something, but they leave so much unsaid. An understanding that can change how you approach relationships, your sense of self, and the way you invite others in. When someone looks at you for the first time, their eyes notice a lot. The way you carry yourself, your facial expressions, the details that stand out, your eyes, your smile, your posture, your style. These are the pieces that often spark attraction or curiosity. It's human nature to scan quickly and make a judgment, sometimes conscious, sometimes instinctual, about what feels inviting or familiar. Those moments can be thrilling, of course, because they signal the possibility of connection. But they can also be fraught because what is seen at first glance is inevitably limited. First glances reveal what is visible on the surface. They reveal physical traits and the energy you carry into a space, but they don't reveal the stories beneath that surface. They don't reveal your fears, your hopes, the quiet battles you fight, or the depths of your kindness. They don't show the years of growth you've walked through or the moments when you felt most broken. First glances don't tell the whole truth about your heart, your mind, or your soul, only the briefest glimpse. This gap between what's seen and what's real creates a tension in relationships that often goes unnoticed. We want to be seen and appreciated, and when first glances land warmly on us, it feels affirming. But when those glances pass by without notice, or when we sense judgment or indifference, it can wound deeply. The pain isn't just about being overlooked, it's about the quiet fear that maybe what's on the surface is all there is to offer. And that fear can shape the way you show up in every interaction after. One of the challenges here is that first glances can feel like a verdict. They can feel like a test you have to pass in moments that aren't designed for you to show your full self. You might start to believe that your worth is wrapped up in how quickly someone decides if you're attractive or interesting. That belief can make you shrink, perform, or hide parts of yourself to fit the mold you think someone else wants to see. And the more you do that, the more disconnected you become from your authentic self, the person you want to be known and loved for. It's important to realize that the way someone looks at you in those first seconds says more about them than it does about you. Their gaze reflects their own experiences, preferences, insecurities, and conditioning. Some people are quick to notice beauty or energy, others are guarded or distracted. Their reaction is filtered through their own inner world, their history, their fears, their desires. When you keep this in mind, it can take some of the pressure off feeling like their glance is the final word on your value. What first glances don't reveal is the potential for growth, connection, or understanding. They don't show how people can learn to appreciate the deeper parts of each other over time, how attraction can evolve into affection, how initial impressions can be overturned by kindness, vulnerability, and shared experiences. Real relationships aren't built in the blink of an eye. They're built in the small moments after the first glance, when people start to listen, to notice what's beneath the surface, and to accept each other fully. This understanding invites a different way of being in the world. Instead of fearing or fixating on what someone might see first, you can focus on showing up as your whole self, knowing that the right people will take the time to look beyond that first impression. You stop shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's gaze and start living with the confidence that your worth isn't defined by a single glance. When you begin to see first glances as just one piece of a much bigger picture, you also become more compassionate with others. You recognize that everyone is navigating their own fears and judgments in those moments just like you. You learn to give people the grace to be curious and patient rather than expecting instant understanding or acceptance. There's freedom in that patience, freedom from the pressure to be instantly lovable, instantly understood, instantly perfect. It opens the door to relationships that develop naturally, where attraction and connection deepen over time. And it frees you from the trap of thinking that your value is on trial every time you meet someone new. The truth is, first glances are inevitable. We all have eyes that take in the world quickly and hearts that hope to be noticed. But what matters most is what happens after that glance, the willingness to stay, to learn, to show up fully, and to invite others to do the same. That's where the real magic of connection lives. So next time you catch someone's eye or someone looks at you, remember, what that glance reveals is only the beginning. There's so much more waiting to be discovered, both in others and in yourself. And when you hold space for that deeper seeing, you step into relationships that are not just about being looked at, but about being truly known and deeply loved. Finding confidence outside someone's gaze is a journey many of us have taken, often without realizing it. It's a path that leads away from the constant need for approval, away from the anxious watchfulness of how others see us, and toward a steadier, quieter place inside ourselves. When you depend on someone else's eyes to feel worthy or attractive, you give away a part of your power. You make your sense of value conditional on something that's not fully within your control. But confidence that grows beyond that external gaze is different. It's rooted in something deeper, something more reliable. For a lot of women in particular, this dynamic plays out in relationships and dating in ways that are subtle but powerful. You walk into a room hoping someone will look your way, maybe hoping for a smile, a spark, or a sign of interest. And when it happens, it can feel good, even uplifting. But when it doesn't, or when it feels fleeting, it can leave you unsettled, questioning your worth or doubting your appeal. Over time, this can create a kind of dependency on external validation where your mood, your confidence, even your sense of self, feels tied to how often or how warmly someone looks at you. That kind of dependency is exhausting. It pulls your attention outward when what you really need is to turn inward. It encourages you to shape yourself to fit what you think others want to see, rather than living authentically. And it keeps you in a cycle of constantly seeking and never quite arriving. Finding confidence outside someone's gaze means learning to root your sense of worth in your own truth, your own values, and your own understanding of who you are. It means recognizing that your value isn't a reflection in someone else's eyes. It's a reality that exists regardless of whether you're noticed, liked, or chosen. This isn't easy. It's not something that happens overnight or by deciding one day to stop caring what others think. It's a process of patience and practice. It begins with small moments of self-awareness where you catch yourself looking for approval and gently shift your focus. Instead of asking, "Do they find me attractive?" you ask, "Am I being true to myself in this moment?" That shift may feel subtle, but it changes everything. It invites you to be curious about who you are beyond how you look or how others respond to you. It invites you to explore your passions, your strengths, your values, the parts of yourself that no one can take away because they aren't tied to external approval. Part of this journey is also learning to embrace your imperfections and vulnerabilities. Confidence outside someone's gaze isn't about being flawless or perfect. It's about accepting that you are enough as you are, with all your scars, quirks, and complexities. When you start to believe that, you stop trying to hide the parts of yourself that feel risky to show. You stop living behind masks and start stepping into your authenticity. This authenticity becomes magnetic in a different way. Instead of trying to win someone over with appearances or charm, you begin to attract people who appreciate the real you, the you that's not dependent on their gaze for validation. That kind of connection is deeper and more fulfilling because it's based on truth, not performance. Finding confidence outside someone's gaze also means setting boundaries with the parts of the world that try to define you. It means saying no to comparisons, to harsh self-judgment, and to messages that tell you you're not enough. It means protecting your inner space so that your self-worth can grow in safety, away from the noise of other people's expectations. There will be moments when you still feel the pull of external validation. That's normal. The culture around us often reinforces the idea that we need to be seen and approved to matter. But the difference is, over time, those moments become less powerful. You learn to meet them with kindness instead of panic, to remind yourself of your inherent worth even when the world feels silent or critical. This process doesn't just change how you see yourself, it changes how you relate to others. When your confidence isn't tied to someone's gaze, you show up in relationships with a steadier heart. You communicate more openly, set clearer boundaries, and engage more fully because you're not afraid of losing approval or being rejected. You're able to love and be loved without the undercurrent of anxiety that comes from needing to be constantly validated. Ultimately, finding confidence outside someone's gaze is about reclaiming your power and your peace. It's about discovering that you are whole and enough, not because of how others look at you, but because of who you are at your core. And when you live from that place, your relationships, your self-image, and your life take on a new depth of meaning and freedom that no external gaze can ever give or take away.